I want to talk now about uh, Jim Thompson Villa as archive.
Should, should we call it villa or house?
Well, it's called Jim Thompson House, but I'm renaming it as Jim Thompson Villa.
Because I also like the description that you gave that the Bangkok by then was basically villages and villas.
Yes, that's why I'm trying to change a few language things, so even many structures, and this is why it would be great to have Pirasi here. Many of the palace things that are called palaces in Bangkok should be called villas.
Yeah, actually the villas, right?
Yes. Payatai. Palace is a villa.
Exactly.
Anyway, so I'm gonna speak right to that. This section speaks right to how he transformed this Thai house into a villa, and I call it an archival project because he's collecting these things and then he's sort of hiding some things in this archive, and so and I'm indebted to Vaijayanti Rao to interpret the architecture of Jim Thompson House as an ethnographic archive in the context of the current exhibition, News from Yesteryear, curated by Bruno Lemercier. Anthropologist Rao has argued for examining the South Asian megacity as an archive, where all the social contradictions in the interplay of the urban and the rural are present. By uncovering ethnographic information from the details of Thompson's house as archive, I will show how it is a Roman villa as well as a modern house. According to the late art historian David Coffin, the architecture of the Roman villa is a theatrical display of an ascendant and foreign papal aristocracy, collecting artifacts and commissioning murals and buildings that progressively dissolve into nature as they accomplish the designed disappearance of peasant labor from view. This is the flip side of the appearance of the peasant migrant in the post-colonial megacities, such as Mumbai that Rao describes, and also in contrast to the metropolitan ideal of human control over nature. While the Ruen Thai has not been previously classified as a villa, I will translate it as such, given the vernacular roots of the Italian Renaissance villa. Villas originated as suburban and rural retreats that transformed hunting lodges, farms, orchards, and vineyards into theatrical displays of power and knowledge of their patrons. The term villa itself refers to the villagiato, the holiday spirit of sensuous rural retreat and nature, which of course is a very important part of life in modern Thailand today. In bringing an urban elite to the suburbs or countryside, whether in 16th century Rome or 21st century Bangkok, conflicts of labor, class, society, as well as the control of nature appear. In the 20th century, Jim Thompson choosing the site for the house in a canal-side jungle across from the silk weavers of Ban Krua reverses the metropolitan logics of the control over nature and the disappearance of labor. So at this point, I have some slides that talk a little bit about Jim Thompson's background and why I think a Roman villa was a source of inspiration for his house. I want to introduce another historian, Vincent Scully, and you're going to Yale. That was Vincent Scully's home. And he's the one that, like Ruen Thai, bringing a traditional Thai house into European history of architecture. He brought the American tradition of houses into the sort of global history of architecture. Of course, U.S. is a colonized country, so not like Thailand. So he and it's the historian's revenge, and so this is at the same time that Colin Rowe was, and there was a great return to the abstract formalism of Le Corbusier, and so he was introducing this other vernacular tradition of the shingle style house in America. And of course, I think Jim Thompson was very much part of that. And in the exhibition, you can see the house he helped his mother design and built in the beach community of Rehoboth, Delaware. And you can see it's a shingle style house box with wings and additions. But the most important thing is this huge wraparound porch, and all the rooms on the inside have French doors. So this relationship that you described between inside and outside is rooted in this sort of opening up of the closed colonial American box through the introduction of what they call French doors, and the American porch. Now it's the backyard deck, is this extension of the interior into the outside, which is really important part of American architecture, and very, very important now post-COVID. These kinds of outdoor interiors are really crucial now in architecture. And there he is in the middle in the back. And you can see he's a young Princetonian. He went to undergraduate at the most elite university and for undergraduate education in America, Princeton. And his sister is just to the left, to his right, left on the screen, who became a landscape architect. And as an undergraduate at Princeton, Jim Thompson became interested in architecture. And this is the campus of Princeton today. And you can see it has a very, very interesting particular form of indoor and outdoor, the way we're talking about. So it's basically residential colleges with academic buildings in the center. And unlike Yale, you'll see the cloister residential colleges are closed courtyards, and Princeton, they're fragments, and they're U-shaped and L-shaped and zigzag shaped. So so there is this really strong and direct connection, which is you know, an architect's education at Princeton is that architecture is 50% inside, 50% outside, 50% built, 50% landscape and nature. And so the other interesting thing from the biography is that his father was a trustee of the university, and so so he was in charge, his father, of the buildings of the university. So he was sort of presiding over all the new construction. And this is the 1920s were the boom economy, and so all the big industrialists were donating money and sending their sons. Only males attended Princeton at this time to this university. And so so it's really interesting that the father had an architect and a landscape architect of his two children following him around, probably on these adventures. Also, while he's at Princeton, F. Scott Fitzgerald's first book, you can see one of the Gothic towers of Princeton, and the cover of this book is This Side of Paradise, about an undergraduate's experience at Princeton, being so close to New York City, an hour away, like Yale. You just hop on the train and you can have a wild and debauched lifestyle. And then The Great Gatsby, of course, is a villa estate. It takes place in the villa estate on the North Shore of Long Island. And the decadence of this period before the stock market crash and the Great Depression. So after Princeton, Thompson went to Penn and formally studied architecture there. He's introduced to it through his father and working on his mother's house and while at Princeton. And so the leading professor of the school at the time was Paul Philippe Cray, a French gentleman French architect, you know, great buildings in Philadelphia. This is his sketch for the Rodin Museum in Philadelphia, which you can see. So he was the one that brought French, you know, Roman-inspired architecture to teaching in America and building in America. So, and even in the drawing style that is in the archival show, you can see the Beaux-Arts tradition, and it's quite remarkable. Louis Kahn was also a student of Paul Cray a few years before Jim Thompson arrived on the scene. And it isn't until much later, after he graduates, he works professionally in 1955, 4 years before Jim Thompson builds his house on the canal. Louis Kahn designs his breakout building, the the Trenton bathhouses. And you can see a modernist interpretation that takes that Beaux-Arts tradition and turns it on its head a little bit in terms of the open spatial arrangement of this configuration of four overlapping pavilions. And so Thompson's first house is full of French doors. French doors to the balcony upstairs, French doors to the garden there. And so you can see where he's coming from. And his first sketch of the house is like, could be in Vincent Scully's shingle style. If he was building in America, it would be all in shingle style, but it's in Thailand, and so it's teak wood. And so he's imagining not a Thai house as this a deck connecting pavilions, but as a fully built biaxially symmetrical house with the two side wings that are always present, a veranda, he calls it here, or a porch connecting them, living, dining. And then he has this cross axis because his ideas that, and he's writing to his sister, the landscape architect, to say, look at what I'm designing for the garden here. So he imagines a big lawn facing the canal, framed by two trees. He imagines a sculpture garden off the dining room, which is on the cross axis, not facing the canal, and with a kitchen. You know, it's really, and then this jungle, which is in the back corner. And then the driveway leads to a kind of gravel court, which is still there, and what we'll call, you know, the back of the house. We'll call the canal the front of the house. And then this sketch, it seems to be he's already looking at his collection of Thai houses, which have to be disassembled and floated on the canal for him to reconstruct here, because you can see the column structures and the panels. But it's still, you know, incredibly derivative of his teacher, Paul Kray, and the Beaux-Arts tradition. And the villa, you know, the living room is an enormous logia between these two wings, but there is no wood terrace, wood deck like in the Thai house. So these are the three, this is his collection. These are the three Thai houses that constitute the main part of the house. The two side wings from the village outside of Ayutthaya from the grandmother. The center pavilion, which is, and sorry, this drawing by Graham Byfield sort of switches orientation, where the canal is on the bottom here and it's on the top here. But sorry, your brain's going to work, but you see the big difference is the fat wings here that attach to there. He develops a space in between, poche space, we call it in the Beaux-Arts tradition. So that's really the forensic part of it. And so so it's this space in between, and not a wood deck, but a terrace, meaning terra, coming out from the earth, facing the canal. And no kitchen, because apparently he entertained his guests by buying food from the street vendors down the soy.
This is so cool.
So when you go, this is a second floor plan, but there is a huge space under the drawing room and the study and this ceramic collection room. And I call that the grotto. Any Italian villa has this cool stone space underneath ground. And the terrace, as you see, I drew a section later on, is a thermal mass. It's brick. He brought brick from Ayutthaya and built this brick terrace instead of a wood a wood deck, a wood platform. And maybe he got the idea from the granny's house that had this brick center that he labeled the garden and the plan from granny's house. So this grotto underneath the house is a cool, inviting space, and apparently he used that for large parties. And here it is under the house, but transformed with this stone floor. because under a traditional Thai house, there'd be the weaving loom or the water buffalo, so it would be a workspace.
Yeah. Keep animals and
Yeah. Next is the stair hall. And this is, any American house has the stair hall is the first thing you come into. And you, of course, you never see it, the two-story space in the Thai house. The structure, the columns are always 2 stories, but you never see that 2-story space. And so that's quite amazing. And it is, where one can understand the construction of a 2-story Thai house that you don't perceive from the platform. And then there's a corridor. So he is a Victorian, early 20th century.
Okay.
And from the stairway, again, like a shingle style house, you enter to a corridor, which brings you across from the dining room to his collection of ceramics, to a living room, to a study, and then a disguised bathroom, and to his master bedroom, or he can bring a guest to the guest bedroom. So basically, he's taking what's called the veranda of the Thai house, and this is the space that Pialata writes about so beautifully. That's the space in between. It's kind of half interior, half exterior. It's cool and shaded and has a polished floor. It's not like the wooden platform desk, and it's raised above the deck, and it's below the drawing room. And so by making this a corridor as opposed to a veranda, he had to eliminate that step that would normally be in a traditional Thai house. So that's another really important detail. And so you see this resembles the Thai house in terms of the columns and the panels, but has the French doors that open and has this funny balustrade. But you can see it's a corridor. There would be a step here at the columns, and you would be able to sit on that step in the veranda. So he took the veranda and made it into a corridor. And then the poche. So poche is the kind of hidden space in a masonry building, and the French Beaux-Arts tradition coming from Roman architecture. So you hide things in the poche. And so what's interesting is the niches. Niches are spaces carved into masonry structures to put sculpture in. And so, of course, there's no tradition in Thailand of this kind of structure. And so he makes this kind of wooden vitrine box and to replace the windows that would be in this pavilion. So again, that's a very much, a kind of, he's hiding the Renaissance classical trope of poche in the niche here. So that's just to start our discussion about some of the forensic stuff. I'm going to talk about the terrace in more detail in the last section, but in terms of the interior of the house, it's sort of this transformation of creating a circulation zone, a stairway and a corridor, like in Western architecture, because he got rid of the wooden terrace and platform.
But I think what also interesting is this, like, you never seen some a space of Thai house that like half interior, half exterior like this, also in this scale, because he took the wall off, right? And he extend the supposed to be a closed box of the pavilion to the veranda, that became one space. And the scale, it's actually quite unusual.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that was my shock of visiting there as a diner in this space, as opposed to a tourist walking along the corridor.
Just walk through, right?
Because you close the shutters during the day, it's too hot. So you only experience, and it just looks like a living room with a lot of furniture and few sculptures. But when you open, it's only at night and it's only possible to open it because he doesn't use air conditioning except in this little study, and the poche is the air conditioning. The poche is the area for the air conditioner. And so I want you to go up to the roof and to see how he managed this, you know, because this is his architectural intervention is you know, this sort of in-between space and how he connected these and made this, you know. So, but you're absolutely right. When at night, when it's open, you know, it is spectacular. I have a picture at the end that kind of shows that.
And then I think also during the day, you said it was so hot, and the contrast between these dark wood panels of the interior and the light outside would be too strong that you don't really perceive the space that well.
Yeah, I remember Pialata writes about that as well, the light and dark and the intensity of the light outside. And again, the traditional Thai house has much more movement in and out of the pavilions in relationship to the wooden terrace, the wooden platform, the wooden deck.